All right, everyone. We are very happy to have you with us today. And unfortunately, Gay Bradshaw came down with an illness and had a high temperature of 104. And at the very last minute, our good friend Kailo, who is calling in from Finland, agreed to join us. And you may know Kaarina and Barbara Mann from their latest book. It's the Bear Book. What's the name of the bear book? I'm so sorry.
The
The
woman who
woman,
married the bear.
the woman who married the bear. That's right. So today we're welcoming you to our very first salon for 2024. It's salon number 55, The Gift of Nature. Um, I'm Letecia Layson, your moderator. So let's begin. I'm going to introduce Barbara, who will speak first. So Barbara Alice Mann is a professor emerita of humanities in the Jessup Scott Honors College of the University of Toledo in Toledo, Ohio. She has been included in encyclopedias and biographies, she has produced 15 books. Her latest work is The Woman Who Married the Bear, co-authored with Kailo. Barbara's mimeographs include The President of Massacre, Indian Killing for Political Gain, Spirits of Blood and Breath, The Twin Cosmos, Indigenous America, Daughters of the Earth, George Washington's War on Native America, and Iroquoian Woman. In addition, she's published 500 chapters and articles. She's really prolific. A Bear Clan, Ohio Seneca, with community recognition. She lives in her Ohio homeland and works for the rights of the people indigenous to Ohio. Welcome, Barbara. We are so happy to have you with us.
Thank you. Let me see if I can get the screen up. There we go. All right. Hopefully people can see this. Before I go any farther, people tell me, can you see it, Letecia? Good. Okay. So, I noticed that Jews walk said she was in unceded territory of the Anishinaabe, otherwise known as Ottawa, Canada. Well, I'm sitting in unceded territory too. All of this area was supposed to be reserved to, especially the Seneca, Potawatomi, and some of the other groups here, but it was all seized rather illegally in 1817, along with the rest of Ohio. So I'm talking about the mound builders in Ohio, and they go back about 5,000 years. It's not a recent development. There's a lot of iconography, and it has a lot to do with earth and sky, which is how the anthropologists describe it. We actually will talk in terms of blood, which is earth, that means lineage, and breath, which is sky, and that actually means outer space. So the mounds have real meaning, and they have not been taken much care of by Europeans. In fact, they did their best to destroy everything. But we still have some left. I'd like to talk about the various themes that I want to go over here today. The first is the cosmic balance. The whole idea, we don't have good and evil. That's a European, actually, it's a Middle Eastern idea that was spread to Europe rather forcibly, first by the Christians and then by other groups that came in later. Islam has also spread it, especially North Africa and their whole area. The idea that there's only one God and the other guy is evil and it's all male, it's a big sausage fest. That's entirely Middle Eastern. That's really not even European. The Celts didn't think like that. And certainly does not apply to indigenous America, where the idea is that you've got blood, water, which is earth, you got breath, air, which is sky, and the job of human beings and other living creatures is to help keep it all in balance because it's roiling, and you're sitting in the middle and you're trying to keep it all in balance. That's the job that you've got to keep the twin ship going. The mound builders knew this. They were a very ancient factor, and it kind of split as the rivers split. As far as indigenous people are concerned, the Mississippi that is not does not start up at Lake whatever in Minnesota. It actually starts at the Allegheny, goes through the Ohio, and down to what's called the Lower Mississippi, and that's the Great Horned Serpent flowing down to the Gulf of Mexico. He's traveling. So the Ohio Valley, they call it, is obviously where I am. Mississippi Valley, there are mounds that go up into Dakota territory, but it's largely along the southern areas where the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Muskogee, and the other southern peoples were. So they're two different kinds, although we have many of the same memes going on. We've got Ohio mound builders are largely so-called moon-eyed people. They go back 5,000 years. And Telegay, who are the Cherokee. And they came in afterwards and picked up and continued for the next couple thousand years. So as I said, we've got the twinned cosmos, and the book on the right is the one that I did on this, Spirits of Blood, Spirits of Breath. Blood actually is about family lineage, who you're related to, and we counted it matriarchally. Of course, the Europeans came in and completely screwed it up by trying to force everything to go through patrilineage, but no, we've kept the matrilineage. Water actually connects with blood in that it's really amniotic fluid we're talking about. So the lakes, the rivers, and what they call the salt ponds, the oceans, are actually amniotic fluid, sustaining life on planet Earth. Breath is a whole lot of it is spatiality, and that's breath, the winds, they go in all directions, but we are specifically talking about outer space. One of the things you'll notice is the stars move over the course of the year, and the idea is they're being blown around in a circle. And that's, of course, because of the wobble of the Earth, but everybody has their little stories about that. So, by and large, blood obviously are females. On planets, women are in charge because we make the babies and we have the birth giving capacity. In outer space, men tend to be more in charge. You get more male images. Doesn't mean there isn't blood in sky or breath in earth. There is. It's just where the balance of power is. And of course, it's all got to be kept in balance by us. All right, so we got the mound builders, and I'm calling this Woodland Edition. That's the Ohio Valley. Tsundagui, that's moon eyes. Means when you say moon eyes, you mean people are watching the night sky, taking their cues from the night sky. And who does that? Farmers do that because they need to know when to plant and weed and harvest. And the stars are very good at giving messages, and they'll tell you when to do this stuff. So the men were in charge of watching that because that's their purview, the spatiality of it. From 3,000 or so, and I think it goes back earlier than that. They've got some artifacts that date back to 3,000 before the Common Era, but there are some that date back even a little bit further. Artifacts don't spring full blown one day, for an archaeologist to find. There's a background to them, or they wouldn't have been created in the form they're found. So I know it's older than that. They were the first folks, and Grandma Crandall, who was the head mother of actually Ohio people, but the Ohio Cherokee, told me that they were a dark-skinned people. The light-skinned people, the Iroquois, the Salagi, we were somewhat later. The dark-skinned people went farther south. From about 1000 before the Common Era to about 1400, you have the Iroquois, Lenape, Shawnee, and still the Salagi. Salagi come in about 1000, and then the rest of us come in a little bit later. We started on the West Coast, and there are long traditions about coming east for a lot of reasons I don't have time to go into in this little speech. But the Moon-eyed people began the idea. By and large, they did effigies. like that on the top. You'll see the what the Iroquois call the cloudland eagle. A lot of people call the thunderbird. I think that's kind of become a common reference point. There's a lot more to this mound too. If you go to the website, I've got listed where I got it. There's also a bear trailing. This is very ancient. There's a bear trailing the eagle. It's a very, very common motif in Native America. On the bottom, you see the sort of iconography that comes in the later period with the circles and the squares and some very interesting half circles and designs that spring from that. We'll talk about those in a second. Okay, the woodlands distribution of the mounds. Cyrus Thomas worked for the Smithsonian, and he actually set the record straight. The settlers had all their rumors and conspiracy stories about um, the Europeans coming to North America, and the Europeans, some lost race, some white people built the mounds. Well, no, we know exactly who built the mounds, and Europeans had none whatsoever to do with it. So Cyrus Thomas comes in the 1890s and he realizes this. And he actually went on a campaign in the 1890s to demonstrate that these were Native American created structures. And the minute he conclusively showed that, Europeans just forgot all about them and didn't want to talk about them anymore because it wasn't about them. Kind of like Trump, if it's not about him, doesn't want to talk about. Okay, so you can see the Ohio Valley going up right, reaching towards the Great Lakes, and you can see where I am on the western tip of Lake Erie, which is the cat, the panther. She's a panther. Erie means panther. So the Ohio Seneca are actually the Panther people, and you can see all the red dots there. Those are all mound sites, not one mound, but mound cities, sites. And they go all the way up around the lower Great Lakes, Ontario and Erie. And then they come down, you can see at Cairo, Illinois, where it joins the Mississippi and goes south. You can also see it going up north farther to where the Sauk, Meskwaki, and some folks wound up. That's not actually where they started, by the way. They started in what's now Ontario, and were pushed west. Anyway, you also got a little bit of flowering kind of independently in Florida. And they would actually build mounds out of shells. Some of those were slag heaps, but the rest were deliberate mounds. Very interesting way to build a mound if you think about it. Okay, now in 1870 in Ohio, where I am, this is the heart of the Ohio Valley, there were 10,000 known mounds, cataloged everything. There were 1,500 of the geometric mounds, they call them. Those are the iconography. They were writing. They were actually land writing. By 1908, that meant there were about 12,000 known mounds in this area. By 1950, they didn't care anymore. They were just plowing them under and destroying them apace because it looked too much like the area was already inhabited if they didn't. So there are about 4,000 of those left, haven't been destroyed. Okay, the types of mountain. I've got a panel on the right side, so I can't see the fifth one. I don't know if there's a way to get rid of the panel on the side or not. But you've got the loaf mounds, conical mounds, effigy mounds, platform mounds, and there would be the final mounds over there. Just a second, let me shrink this down. I can't shrink it down.
Barbara, at the top right, there's a view button above
view-
the panel, and you can change where the panel goes.
I don't see a view button. There's no view button.
Okay, well, it should be in the very top right of
Maybe it's under
where you're
more.
sharing.
Hide video panel. Would that hide you? Okay. And the final one is the geometric mounds. So I want to go over each of these in order. This effigy mound here is a really nice one. I don't think I talked about him in full when we get to the Newark site. That is where the cloudland eagle, the thunderbird, came down. A ceremony was going on, cremation ceremony actually, and it was so strong that it attracted the cloudland eagle. He came down and He can't really land, but he touched his foot on the ground, and when he rose back up, it pulled the ground up under his foot. So that's the foot of the great cloudland eagle there, who attended that ceremony. So I want to go over each of these in order of the type and what they did. Oops, now I can't advance.
You might need to click on the PowerPoint program itself.
Yeah, I did. Okay. First of all, there are loaf mounds. These were actually highway markers, and they call them loaf mounds. This is what the Europeans call them because they look like loaves of bread. And I pulled this particular picture from the 1840s in the Muskingum Valley, which is in southeastern Ohio, because it shows the size of people relative to the size of the mounds. So you can see people walking between the two loaf mounds there, one on the right, one on the left, and you can see that they're really very tall. Um, and the area in between was actually a highway. We had very wide highways, 60 to 80 feet wide. And just like the white striping on highways today, we put those on the sides of the road so people couldn't get lost going where they were going when it was unfamiliar territory. Also, it was so the parents who were going with the little kids could keep an eye on the kids because the kids could run up the sides a bit, but they really couldn't get lost. You couldn't lose track where the kids were, and kids are going to run around, especially if you're traveling. Also, the smooth, level central highway made it very easy for elders and pregnant women and other people with any kind of disability to be able to track along with everybody else as they went to ceremony or went to a council or wherever they were going. So those are actually highway markers or perimeter markers. And you can see a lot of these. This map on the top actually comes from the League of the Haute by Lewis Henry Morgan, or yeah, it's Lewis Morgan. He did that in 1850, and he actually provided a map of where all the indigenous highways are. And you can see here, this particular map is really I-90 and I-86. You can see where the two roads are. So what the Europeans did is they just came and laid their highways on top of our pre-existing roads. And there's another old Iroquois road, I-71, going way down south. That was our road too. So they just laid their highways over our old roads. Let's see, I gotta click on the, okay, there we go. Conical mounds. Right on the top left, you can see one that's been turned into a kind of a tourist site. These conical mounds are actually burial mounds. They're for burying people. We didn't bury everybody, we cremated most people, but those we were inviting to reincarnate would be buried. So they were remarkable or noted people of some sort. By and large, the conical mounds, those were started by the Moonite people along with the effigy mounds. And so there are a lot of them. They're pretty old. On the top right, you can see one of the pictures from the 1848 survey that the Smithsonian commissioned. The very first study the Smithsonian ever did was a survey and schematic of all the mounds that Squire and Davis could find. They were surveyors. So you can see the circle of sky surrounding the burial mounds. So those are where a lot of people are buried in those. At the bottom right or bottom left is a depiction of Fort Meigs. I couldn't find one that actually showed the hill. They call it a hill. In the War of 1812, U.S. sighted a fort right on top of that hill because they had a good view of the Maumee River, a really wide view of the Maumee River. And it also looked on the Fort Miamis of the British, which was across the river down a little way. So they thought it was a great location for their fort. They started digging down while they were building their fort posts and found nothing but burials because it was an Erie Panther burial site. So Native Americans who know what the heck they're doing do not go into Fort Meigs as tourists or for any reason. And you can always tell who really knows what they're doing and who doesn't. Because during the reenactments, they get Native Americans to come and help reenact with the soldiers. The Native Americans who know what they're doing, who know tradition, will not go into the fort because they know it's a burial mound. Those who don't know what the heck they're doing just kind of wander in. So you got to be very careful going to dead places because ghosts will follow you home. All right, effigies. Now this is another view of the eagle that I've got on my Spirits of Blood, Spirits of Breath book. And I like the eagle. Among other things, you can see the little highway leading to the square that once accompanied it. You can also see the eagle himself. He's the great thunderbird. Most people would call him a thunderbird. And it's a very large monument, by the way. He's in flight, so he's in the circle of sky, and he's made of stone. That's a way to connect sky and earth. Stone is very much earth. Circle and bird very much sky. So that is a connection right there. So the cosmos is completed in that one little icon. Not so little. It's in Putnam County, Georgia. It's actually a very large effigy. Oops. There we go. Okay, another effigy mound. This one is actually more recent. As people were being transported west, they stopped and built this. This is a possum. Possum is absolutely a symbol of earth and femaleness. They're marsupials. So the people who created this actually gave her a marsupial pouch. And I've got a little arrow showing you where it was. This is from the original 1848 schematic. It was made entirely of flint, little bits of flint. Flint are the most intensive earth you can find. It's also associated with male, so apparently the baby was a male. But the mother is absolutely a mother, and she's looking west. She's looking to the west here. I've been to that hill. I've been to I visited the opossum. Settlers call it an alligator mound. It's not. It's a possum. You can see the entire Licking Valley, which is a river valley, from the top site there. So the people went up to see where they were going, make sure they knew they had their bearings, and they built this beautiful honoring of a possum and the mother spirit. Now the settlers came and they stole all the flints for their flintlock rifles, so that's gone. And the top left paw was also destroyed because there's an upscale housing development there, and they thought that mound was interfering with their view of the valley, so they were going to bulldoze it under. But one of our members, the American Alliance of Ohio members, saw what was going on and immediately called the Historical Society and everybody else you could think of and stopped them cold. So part of that paw is now gone, but we saved the rest of the monument. Okay, here's the great horned serpent, and he is a male symbol of Earth and a very important one. I'm sure you've heard of the Serpent Mound, Southern Ohio, Adams County. And interestingly enough, settler women saved it from being bulldozed. I don't know if they knew quite what they were doing or if it was unconscious, but he very much favors women, the great horned serpent does. And you can see that he's traveling because his humps are writhing along. But you can also see he's running out of his coil there on the left. He's hunting alone. Now, archaeologists and such will tell you, oh, his mouth is open and he's got an egg in his mouth. No. I don't know why they don't just break down and ask us. Every creature that exists, you, me, your dog, your cat, every creature that exists has a medicine pouch. Whether or not you know it, you got one. And you keep your vision articles, especially your puberty vision articles in there, and anything else that's of significance to you later on. This was built by probably Moon Eyes, possibly with Cherokee help, or possibly the Cherokees picked this up later. But when you're the great horned serpent, how do you carry your pouch? In fact, if you're a snake generally, how do you carry your medicine bag? Especially when you're traveling, which is when you take it with you. Well, the great horned serpent extrudes his horns when he's traveling, and then he slings his medicine pouch between his horns. That's what you're looking at. It's not an egg, it's his medicine bag. In the center of his bag is his Ulansudi stone. That is it's a galena stone, and you put it in water, it can float, and they use it for scrying. The women provide the water, hold the bowl, and then the male medicine person reads what the stone means as it moves, and the water movement tends to be a breath thing. And then he will speak aloud what the message is. So that's a very important stone. It's heavily connected with the great horned serpent. Notice the coils that he's running out of. This mound is actually an extremely sophisticated observatory. You can see all the solstices and all the important times of year, depending on where you're sighting from the curls in his tail and which hump you're going through, or if you're going directly through the Umansuri, you can spot every single important event in the night sky from this particular mound. Archaeologists like to say it's a couple thousand years old, which would make it probably Salagi, but it's a moon-eyed effigy. I'm sure of that. It's more like about 4,000 years old. Some people did a study of the night sky and how it would line up, and it has to be pretty old because of the way it lines up with stars. Okay, this is a sock effigy, and it's actually in Wisconsin. This is the great hare. He's kind of like if you go farther to the desert southwest, you get coyote. If you're in the northeast, it's going to be flint. He's a tricky earth spirit. And earth spirits tend to be trickier than sky spirits who don't have a sense of humor. Anybody that's earth-based has a sense of humor. He does. It's not necessarily good judgment. It's kind of like adolescent boy humor. So you can see from the picture on the right that they heedlessly cut off his legs to run a road through there. Geez, I'm sure that made him pretty mad. But they've since etched back in where his legs were. I kind of realized what they did later on and put it back because they could still tell where the legs were. And possibly because he was very angry about it, the Sauk people might have required them to put the legs back. You don't want the great hare angry with you. This is another effigy, and it's an intaglio. They kind of etch into the ground, sort of like the Nazca lines. Okay, then you've got function sites, which are habitation sites. These are the platform mounds. They used them for a lot of different things. On a regular basis, the chiefs, the holy people, and chiefs included women as well as men, by the way, they would live up on the platform because it's their job to take care of the people. So they got to be able to see what's going on. This is Ohio. It floods like crazy, especially before the Army Corps of Engineers got busy. So one of the reasons for the very high platforms was during a flood, and there were certain seasons of flood, all the people could just run up on top of the mountain and not drown. So there was always food and structures there to, let the people survive. There are also lookouts. They would be lookouts so you could see what was coming. Like they would always have somebody posted, like if there's a tornado coming or somebody coming you don't know and you got to find out who they are. Or maybe buffalo decide they're going to have a nice run. Yes, we had buffalo in Ohio. You had to know what was going to go on and get the people safe. So they would use it for lookouts. These are also used as observatories. Now, in this particular square mound, no, a mound within a square of earth, that's not what's going on. This is just a regular habitation. But in some of the mounds, like we'll see later, the one in Newark, Ohio, for example, they're observatory mounds. You stand on that mound to get your bearings on the night sky for observing what's going on. So these had multiple uses, like multi-purpose mounds. Here you can see on the top left, Fort Ancient, that's Shawnee. You can see that that was a habitation site. People were up there. Why? Because along rivers, and again, it floods. So you want the people to be safe. You don't want bears marauding in or all these other things happening. Here's Natoa Indian Mound. That would be a Cherokee Mound. And you can see it's flattened off so that you can build on it. And you can even faintly see some of the areas where there were probably habitations. All right, we also got the geometric mound complexities. And there are different designs and they have very specific meanings. Okay, they're based on the directions both on earth and in sky, and they're based on the blood and breath interface. There's also those are the circle of sky and the square of earth. Circles are sky, squares are earth. The plus sign you see there, that's actually the 4 directions. If it's on the earth, sometimes you will see that in a circle. That means you've got the earth directions. And if it's just freestanding, it usually is the wind because it's already up in the sky. So the horizontal would be the direction of the sky, which is east-west. Vertical is north-south, the split sky. You've also got the circles with the center circle, the one that looks like a donut. That's actually the circle of sky surrounding the back of a turtle rising out of water. If you've ever seen a turtle emerging from water, you see his carapace first or her carapace first, and then you see the whole turtle. So this is where the turtle is rising, and that's a very important symbol of Earth. The profile version of it is a half circle over the smaller half circle. So that's a half circle of sky. So you're standing on land looking straight. That's your vantage point. And you see the back of turtle starting to come out of the water. So the one that looks like a donut, that's a top-down view, that's a sky view. The one that's a half circle, that's the straight-on view of somebody standing on Earth. Okay, you'll also see a moderation later on of kind of starts with a square and it's got the half semicircle in it. That's a later modulation of the idea. So you can see here what's going on in this one, they call it the cross in Pickaway County. So you got the cross and then you've got a burial mound right inside of it. So the burial mound is earth. There's no circle around the split sky in the direction of the sky. So that is sky. That's the 4 winds. When it's off earth, it's in the air. That's the 4 winds, well, at least for the Iroquois. And when it's on the ground, it's the 4 mothers of earth, the directions of 4 mothers of earth. And so you can see that the burial mound goes in the center. There's also another one. There's some stones there off to the left. And you can see those other little burial mounds going on. Okay, so you got the nested circles and the semicircles. And as I explained, on the left circle of sky around the rising turtle, that's the aerial view. Then you've got the land view, circle of sky over the hump of the turtle rising from the water. All right, you get some really nice, interesting variations going on. You can see on the one on the left, far left, you got the north-south, which by the way is female direction. And you've got the circle within the circle. And then you've got a little iteration of it over to the right, a smaller iteration of it with a little burial mound. We have reincarnation. And so burial mounds are an invitation to reincarnate. So somebody's being invited, or maybe more than one somebody's being invited to come back. So here we've got the back of turtle surfacing in kind of an aerial view. And on the top right, you got really interesting things going on there. What you've got is a sort of a pregnancy thing going on. When you have the extra circles there, you got circle of sky, but you got some extra pregnancy circles going on there. and they get more explicit as they continue.
Barbara,
Okay.
we're running short on time.
Okay. Some more circles. Look at Portsmouth there. I'll bring him up in a little bit. And then you've got circle of sky, square of earth. Okay, so you got circle and square. Native Americans knew how to make good true circles and true squares. The reasons these are so messed up and misaligned is because in 1918, the US Army decided it was going to use for target practice. They also used it back during the Civil War for target practice. So they practically destroyed the mounds and rebuilt them badly. Here's some more circle variations. Here you see the half circle with the kind of square in the platform living mounds in the middle. I want to get you to, there's some multiple squares in Marietta. Those have all been destroyed. That's a little bit of everything. And I wanted to start showing you the pregnancy motif, how it becomes more and more advanced. Look at the bottom right. You can see that circle getting a little pregnant there. And here you can see what happens when it's final. On the right, you see pregnant Mother Earth holding sky and earth, which is very interesting. And you see another version of it, not as clear cut, on the bottom left. Mother Earth, she's pregnant, holding sky and earth. I find those very interesting. This is the famous Newark earthworks, and on the top circle octagon, you can see the observatory mound off the horizontal bottom of the circle. Don't have time to go into too much. There are 3 of those. 3 is the pay attention number. They're used for tracking the standstills of the moon once a generation. So that was very important. You can see the observatory mound closest to you at the bottom of the center of the picture. Notice that Kentucky circle mound with the burial mound in the center and the multiple iterations around it is the design of Tenochtitlan. Now this is very interesting. I don't have time to go into the meanings of it, but it's about dimensions. Like an onion, when you strip away each layer, it goes in like those nesting dolls. So it's dimensions until you finally get to the final dimension, which is death. When they deforested the Amazon, they found an awful lot of circle squares. This is a very old motif. Okay, and then I've just got this little card from when we had a poster show. Okay, I'm gonna stop share. Did that work?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm gonna mute.
Thank you, Barbara. That was just really fascinating. And I just want to say how important it is to hear Native Americans speaking about the land works and the relationship to the earth and the sky and the relationship to their movement on the land as it's part of nature and depicting that full connectedness that they experienced everywhere that they traveled and everywhere that their eyes looked. So thank you so much for that. And hopefully there'll be some questions for you. And now we have Kaarina with us. Kaarina, thank you so much for stepping in at the last minute. Kaarina Kailo has been a professor of women's studies in Oulu University, Finland. She's a senior scholar at Finnish Academy. She has also held positions at the Simone de Beauvoir Institute in Canada. She has published 5 books, several anthologies, and hundreds of articles on the gift economy, ecofeminism, mythology, bear lore, women's folklore, and sauna healing, as well as gender impact of neoliberalism. She's edited Women and Bears, The Gifts of Nature, Culture, and Gender Revisited. So welcome, Kaarina.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, good. I just have to correct that I'm no longer in any of those positions that you mentioned. I'm now a free scholar. That's another
So
story.
much freedom.
Yes, exactly. And I have to warn you, I have a sick dog here who is giving me a hard time, and there's nobody else in the house, so I may have to open the door at some point. So excuse me in advance. Okay, so Barbara's presentation gave me a lot of confirmation, because I have been playing with the idea of the twin cosmos now, having been influenced by her, and particularly the idea of the old maxim, as above, so below. This connection between the sky world and the earth is very much present now in the research I'm doing on sweat cultures. And I just recently completed a new manuscript on the sauna and the sweat cultures in a comparative light. And I will talk about proxemics, the way that space is used to recreate a kind of micro space of the macrocosmos, and these polarities that create the wholeness of interpersonal relations and of the cosmic relations are very much present in this research. So maybe I can have the first slide. And the next one, I noticed there was a bear in the landscape, so that was very appropriate for my talk, because I never leave out completely the bear religion. So the forthcoming book, I haven't found a publisher yet, but I will soon start that process. It's called Sauna Culture, Sweat and Spirituality on the Architectonics and Cosmology of the Sacred. And the keywords have to do with the gift economy, saunas and sweat cultures among the Lenape, Delaware, and many other native groups, the Iberian, Galician, Iron Age saunas, Irish sweat houses, this notion of proxemics, and the key aspects of the worldview of the world renewal culture of ancient saunas. Next. Proxemics refers to the study of human use of space, and I apply it now to the sacred space. In its broadest sense, it refers to the study of the cultural, behavioral, and sociological aspects of spatial distances between individuals and the way that a given spatial arrangement communicates meaning. And so in this way, the sauna sweat lodge are replicas of the cosmos. But I focus on the maternal and gifting aspects of this cosmic view. Next. So what I'm trying to do in my book is, again, approaching prehistory from the new perspectives that are provided by archaeomythology, indigenous studies, ecofeminism, and gift economy. And I want to expose the biases of patriarchal exchange-related research and foreground the gift-oriented worldview in the primal religion, the cave shrines, the ceremonial underground rooms, which I have also found in old Europe, and the saunas across the world. Just a minute, I have to open the door. Okay, I was trying to buy peace by giving a bone to my dog. Let's hope it works. Okay, so on nature as a gift, as we all know in this group, I'm sure, patriarchy and the logic of exchange, as Genevieve talks about it, is very much about me first. And it's a mechanistic kind of view of nature as a mere lifeless machine and a mere resource for human use and mostly abuse. And we are in the current problems of pollution and climate change because of this ecophobic dominant worldview of the dominator cultures. Extractive capitalism treats Mother Earth and women, vulnerable populations, indigenous peoples, likewise, as resources for the competitiveness of the first sex. In other words, the representatives of exchange. Next. Gifting attitudes, in contrast, I would place them within the organic worldview, and nature people's attitudes of gifting, the turn-taking reciprocity of giving back, or simply giving to express honor and respect. It's interesting that in the Finnish animistic past, we had a verb, pyytää, which combines asking for permission and hunting. So in other words, the old Finnish folk, when catching fish or game, were simultaneously asking for permission. And that was a very different kind of a stance towards other species. And also in Finland as elsewhere, the respect for Mother Earth took the form of giving the first fruits or first parts of the harvest to Mother Earth, and thereby giving thanks. So nature was a projection screen for the philosophy of as above, so below, which expressed the animistic spirituality of interspecies kinship consciousness. I think this is a term by Joan Mahler. What I refer to later as stone babas and barefaced rock formations, they are the protective ancestral guardians and divine guides in this worldview. So gifting is an overarching element of the holistic worldview or cosmovision, where responsibility and care are extended to all forms of life, not just other species. And you all probably know animism, which now is called the life-oriented cultures, believe that all beings and even rocks, lakes, streams, rivers, mountains are alive. And it had the effect of leading to the notion of mutual respect and gratitude, the need to give back to nature and its gift givers what humans receive and are dependent on. And this, in this sense, gifting is not at all a private individual choice as it is in dominator cultures. But it was part and parcel of the shared worldview in native cultures and also among many other nature peoples. And I have found evidence of it also in Finland. Next. I think we can skip. I have a little bit too much here on this gifting. So in my book, I start with the Delaware big house, which Frank Speck has analyzed in 1930, and which is sort of dated, but it still has very interesting details about how it stands for the universe, and is an apt example of the structure replicating the spiritual goal of rituals. The floor, the earth, its four walls, the four quarters, its vault, the sky dome atop, which resides the creator. And to use Delaware expressions, the big house being the universe, the center post is the staff of the Great Spirit with its foot upon the earth, its pinnacle reaching to the hand of the supreme deity. And of course, here the deities have changed from female to male, depending on the time period. But the interesting thing is the center post is present also in the menhirs and stone babas across Eurasia and in many saunas, referring to the maternal ancestor in the sky and on the earth. It serves as the bridge combining, well, I guess it would be, in light of the twin cosmos, it would probably combine the female and the male, the the blood and the spirit. And in Finland, we have Finnish mythology, we have very many equivalents, the great oak or the sauna tree and the Sampo symbol. And the stars are what is replicated in ancient giants and grandmother stones across Ukraine, Russia, Eurasian countries. And again, they express this sense of interspecies kinship, as above, so below. And there's one powerful example of it, the 7 stars, the Ursa Major, the Great Bear, is why the number 7 is often part of the symbolism of these ceremonial centers. Next. Here's an example of the stone babas, these huge rock formations, and behind it you can see the Milky Way. And I couldn't find the picture anymore, but I have seen a picture of 7 stone babas in Ukraine, which are the first format, the first variant of the golden woman, the Zolotaya Baba that I have spoken about earlier. Next. So the 7 menhirs that you find also in Galicia and in Scandinavia, they seem to look for the contact with the Pleiades, the Big Dipper, and the Orion constellation. Next. I think we can go forward. So the big house, the Delaware big house, constitutes a ritual landscape, which is a symbolic replica of the cosmos. It's a simulacrum that constantly alludes to the slain bear and the celestial bear. During the ceremonies, the spirit men would take up positions in such a fashion that the locations they marked out on the earthen floor corresponded to those of the 7 stars of the constellation of the Great Bear. Makve, I don't know how to pronounce that. So the orientation of the turtle shell rattle also is another example of the allegorical fusion of the 2 spaces. The floor plan of the big house, which I am also connecting with the sweat lodge, reflects the spatial coordinates of the firmament above, and especially the stars of the Great Bear. Next. So the purpose of these menhirs that I also will talk about is that they are, in my opinion, the equivalent in some ways of the center post in the sweat culture. I looked up in Wikipedia, and they note that there are many different theories of the meaning of the menhirs, but I focus on the matricultural or matristic perspective, which is provided also by Max Dashu, who has had videos about them. And I'm convinced that they represent continuity. As stone, they are what lasts, and they are objects of gratefulness for ancestral wisdom and guidance, represented and embodied by the Great Mother or Grandmother. And you find these grandmother menhirs in great quantity in Ukraine and other places in the East. Next. So Max Dashu has written about them that they are the earliest monumental art, yet omitted by most histories and even many archaeological surveys. She provides a visual overview of these rarely published monuments of France, Portugal, Spain, Italy, and Sardinia, and a few from Germany, Ukraine, and Greece. In some places, both female and male monoliths appear, but in others, they are exclusively female, suggesting a matrilineal cultural pattern. She offers a look at their recurrent symbols of breasts and necklaces, vulva signs, and the ancestor face, and notes that similarities to these are found in Maghreb and in Ethiopia. Next. So having studied these remnants of the saunas in Ireland, Galicia, and other places, I've noticed that next to them there are statues which could be, well, some of them are clearly monoliths or menhirs, and the oldest ones are female, sometimes female and male. But after the Bronze Age, they are replaced in Galicia, for instance, by warrior statues. And the scholars say that the warrior statues placed next to these ceremonial sacred spaces serve to instill a sense of identity based on warring male heroship. While prior to that, they were images of Sheela Nagigs. Okay, let's go forward. Time is short. So you can flip through these images of these menhirs. Go ahead. Next one. More. So here is an image of a sweat house, an Irish one, where also this three-layered universe, the symbolism is present. But what I'm really drawn to analyzing is the role of the woman at the entrance in many of the, or in the vicinity of these holy places. So we'll see that in the next pictures. Go forward. So this is a Max Dashu image of the Sheela Nagigs, and they are very typical of Galicia, Portugal, Spain, and Ireland. And so they are linked with the sauna, and often were placed in abstract form above the entrance to the sauna. So it meant the woman was inviting people into the womb to experience rebirth. Next. Here is a speculative image of Bridget, the beggaress Bridget, who is often next to the holy wells or to the saunas, the sweat houses. Next. So here you see a remnant of this kind of holy space. This is not a sauna, but the churches that have been built over the saunas, taking place of the sweat culture, still often have the female symbol next to it. Next. There's another one, and you'll see soon that a very similar idea is present in Galicia, in what is recognized as a sweat house. Next. Oh, here is another one from Portugal. Go on. Yeah, this is the one I wanted to show. So this is the typical Galician sauna entrance to the holiest of the holy, which used to be part of the maternal culture. And it has been argued that this could also be a kind of thunderbird. I can't comment on that symbolism, but it's too complex to say here, but it could be a multi-meaning symbol, not only the woman with the displayed legs inviting you to the womb, but it could have, of course, many other twinned meanings. Next. And I found that these 7 menhir statues are present also in Denmark and in Norway, and this one is from Sweden. And I was struck now after Barbara's talk that there seems to be a kind of snake in the number 1. So maybe, who knows, maybe the twin cosmos was present in the worldview of ancient Scandinavians as well. Who knows? Next. So the mystery of the 7 or 9 ancestral statues and individual goddess or warrior statues that I have found reflect shifts in the history of the worldview and mentality from old Europe and the matristic society to the patriarchal mentality. And this is quite present, quite obvious. And also here we have another 7 more phallic structures, which may attest to the change of the gender of the ancestor, or else they might have been both male and female, not sure. Next. And of course, this idea of the great mother, ancestor, grandmother is present in all around the world and in many different formats. Here in the middle, you see the golden woman that I have spoken about, where the human identity is not anthropocentric, but combines different non-human animals, non-human species, and is much more inclusive. Next. So in case I'm running out of time, here is sort of the summary. The shared features of sweat shrines have in common the importance of a symbolic language embedded in the placement of objects, the cardinal directions, mostly the door opening towards the east, the marriage of the earth and of the sky, and an imaginary paying respects, especially to the great mother, ancestral parent, and often to the divine bear. The most archaic features seem to also include the importance of water, springs, fountains, and naturally fire as a purifying agent. And all of these sauna structures and rituals include the notions of purification, healing, ancestor worship, communication with spirits, initiation rites, and the maintenance of order and balance within the individual and the collectivity. And I have to say that it was very interesting to learn from Barbara about the younger dryas and the catastrophes that befell the native lands. And because in one story about the sweat lodge, there is the claim that that it was created in order to prevent any more of those kinds of horrible catastrophes from happening. So the native people had to build the sweat lodge in order to show their respect for the Great Mother and for the powers. There again, that's much more complex than I can now say, but it was a very interesting thing about how the sweat house came into being. Next. And I just want to mention that the menhirs are giants often, and I found some new information about the Scandinavian first goddess Hel. Monica Sjö has also written about it, and there is now seems to be some consensus that the first giants who created the land and the boulders, that they were female giants. And this could also relate to the meaning of the menhirs. But I think what's new in my book is the connection with the sauna and with the most sacred space. So how am I doing with time?
You can take another few minutes.
Okay, well, show the next one. Okay, so here is a summary of the ancestral continuity as an idea in the sauna. The sauna, of course, has everything to do with birth, death, rebirth, and the overstepping of thresholds, liminality, and the sacred. In my opinion, based on my comparative research, it epitomizes the matrix of ancient matristic worldviews. And across cultures, what is typical is the cyclical view of time, a concrete belief in rebirth or reincarnation into the same clan, and world renewal through rituals. A cult of ancestresses and ancestors, worship of Mother Earth and the goddess of cosmos, the divinity of the entire world, interspecies kinship consciousness, which is in nature quite cosmic and not limited to human life, and the gift economy, where you give back respect or first fruits or something else to the to nature. And of course, what is typical of it is the absence of the dualistic worldview and its morality that we tend to take for granted in the Western dominator cultures. So this idiom, so above as below, it really sums up much of the spiritual sauna structure, where they replicate the cosmic layers of a three-layered universe and establish a connection between the twin cosmos, the two realms of ancestral guidance from the sky and from underneath the earth, from the realm of the bear, the hibernation space, where miracles of birth take place. So I could end here.
Thank you so much, Kaarina. That was really beautiful. And the two presentations, as late as it was, you coming into the conversation really connected well together. And I just want to say it was beautiful to see all of those earthworks and both of you being able to share your knowledge about how the ancient world saw this connection between the interspecies, not symbolically. It was quite literal as a reminder, a mnemonic device. And that perhaps one of the things that the Western mind or the dominant mind has a challenge with is we always look for one answer. And these landscapes represent a mnemonic device that, depending on your awareness or your maturity or your understanding, have depths of meaning that are revealed as you enter into your wiser years, to be shared across as legacy, cultural knowledge, cultural treasures, and not just one symbolic meaning of one aspect of a human life or mind. It was brilliant. Thank you both for that. Barbara, did you want to say anything to Kaarina's, her presentation at this time, or shall we open to questions?
I think we should just open to questions. What do you think, Kaarina?
Okay,
Kaarina?
sorry, I will
Yeah.
discuss this with Barbara many times, I'm sure. Now I have to let the dog in again.
Okay, great. Jen, did you have something that you'd like to offer at this time before we open?
Well, maybe I could just say that both of those presentations were beautiful and very informative. And what they show, I think, is what mentality, what kind of ideas and ideology, let's say, there was before capitalism, before the exchange economy took over, quid pro quo. And so basically it was all gift-based. And those are the ideas and practices of respect for nature and as giving and receiving. And instead, what we have now is exchange, which is quid pro quo, giving only in order to receive. And that has been, for me anyway, what has really ruined the continuity of history. I don't even like to use the word, of the progression or the continuity of humanity from the earliest days until the present, because there's been this break in the way we think and the things we do regarding nature for now all the years of 400 years or 500 years of capitalism. And in fact, there's a writer now that I think is quite good named Jason Moore, who says, you know, this is not the Anthropocene. This is not the epoch of Anthropocene. This is the Capitalocene. It's the era of capitalism that is destroying the planet. Not humans, but humans as capitalists, humans as exchange-based instead of gift-based. So that's just what I wanted to say, because I think these presentations have given us an idea of what kind of thinking is based in a respect for nature, a gratitude towards nature, and a proper relationship to nature that we don't have anymore.
Thank you, Jen. That was beautiful. Let me just check in with our question gatherers and see Liliana, and then I'll go to Judith. So Liliana, you have a question for us.
Yes. Maria Suarez Toro says, so thank you so much for the presentations. I would like to ask a question. We are discussing the gift economy network. What are consequences of understanding ourselves as part and fractal in nature? We have spent a lot of time and energy deconstructing the impact of the Newtonian Cartesian separation, but not enough on the consequences of the understanding of the connections today.
Barbara, would you like to speak to that?
Well, in terms of Cartesian style divisions, that's basically what I was talking about at the very beginning of a Middle Eastern sort of an idea, that there's one thing in charge, and when you have the idea of one, anything else is an imposter. Anything else must be destroyed because it's going to come and destroy the one thing that is. I think you see that sort of thing in places where there aren't enough resources. If you look at the Middle East, especially, you know, there was an Algerian author who called places like Algeria and Saudi Arabia dreams made of sand. And if you think about it, that's probably true. What are you missing? Well, obviously potable water and places to grow things. That really cuts down on your ability to survive. And I think that may breed a sort of a raiding mentality where it's me and my immediate family and heck with anybody else. So I think what we're looking at is the conversation of scarcity as opposed to the conversation of plenty, which you're going to find in, for example, Ukraine, which you're going to find in parts of North America. I mean, very lush landscapes where you can grow anything. There's water all over the place. So the mindsets, and Native Americans are really very careful about this. You do not take a spiritual complex that belongs in one place like a desert and transport it to another place like a lush landscape, because the spirits don't gel. They don't know what they're talking about. They are not going to provide good guidance. You don't take a spirit of place from here and plop him down over here. So I think the problem is the portable God of the raiding cultures.
Oh.
And that's what needs to change, because there's no such thing as sharing spirituality at that point. It's going to be my way or the highway, and I'm coming to kill you. You know, that sort of nonsense. And that really stands behind the so-called exchange economy. Is just the rating culture economy. All for me, you get nothing. How can I gouge this out of you without really paying you full value? That's scarcity thinking. When you get to places like Loire Valley in France, or the great grain growing places in Ukraine and the Midwest, you don't have that kind of mentality. There's no need for it. It'll sustain as many people and critters as there are. So I think one of the big problems is transporting these portable gods from raiding culture scarcity to places of plenty, and then just going bananas because there's so much you don't know what to do with it all. And you're still working from your scarcity mindset. I think that's the problem.
Thanks, Barbara. That's brilliant. I love the notion of portable gods. That's, portable gods. Yes. Kaarina, can you unmute again, my friend?
Mary Condren has written also a lot about Irish spirituality and the portable god. It was quite insightful as well, but this was brilliant. And I think that the whole idea of the Holy Land being only in the Middle East is part of the problem that right now, when we have presidential elections and there's a lot of talk about Middle East, there's support for Israel because it's the Holy Land. So the religion is used. It's mixed up with politics in a very disconcerting way. And why isn't your own backyard the holy space? Why do we have to think of Israel as the holy space? But the Christians do that, and it allows for extractive, very negative activities in our nature, because we no longer think of it as sacred or having spirits. I mean, the case in Samiland, there's a lake that's believed to have two bottoms, and it's declared as a sacred space. And some people wanted to take water out of it and sell it as bottled water. And the Sami were saying, well, it's a holy lake with two bottoms, you can't take it. And, of course, these businessmen were laughing at them. What do you mean two bottoms? We're going to go down and check it. And they did actually go and check it, because they didn't have the idea that something could be symbolic. And even if it's not symbolic only, the spiritual value of a certain space is very important. But of course, there's no respect for that. And that's very sad.
Yeah, it's very sad. It's very sad. This notion of a sacred, the land sacred in your backyard. I just want to add that in the Philippines, even today, in the urban spaces, children are taught that when they go outside and they find a green space that you're going to be walking through, like a park or, a bamboo forest or something, or even throwing water outside of your window, they say something. They say "tabi tabi po," and it means, oh, I'm so sorry, I don't mean to disturb you, speaking to the nature elements that are out there as a collective. And so it's a respect and understanding of the unseen world, but the relationship that Kaarina used the term animistic. That's, of course, we have to describe that to the Western world, because those cultures that are still connected, even though we assume that they're not, are still living these very deep knowings of their ancestry, that nature is interconnected always. So I think yes, Kaarina.
I would add that my grandfather taught us, when we would throw hot water on the ground after doing the dishes, he said that we have to warn the the small people. And so we always said, we warned them and said, hot water is coming. So there was a
Yes.
lot of that. He was a paper mill director. So today I would have trouble seeing most paper mill directors teaching this kind of wisdom. But he was very ecologically wise and totally into sustainable living. So I learned a lot of actually gifting practices from him. And you could not take a stone just like that. You had to carefully make sure that there were not ants or something having a nest underneath the rock. So there was, we have a lot of anecdotes about respecting the small people. For instance, you had to ask for permission to build a house in case there was an ant path or some other animal path going just there where you were planning to build. And if you didn't ask for permission, then you could have all kinds of problems of termites or anything crawling into your house. So people just didn't want to take a risk, and that's why they were placating the small people.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Let me check
Today
in
we
with
call it superstition.
Oh, yes. Yes. In the Western mind, they call it superstition. Yeah. Let's check in with Judith and see if she has a question for us.
Some years ago, I was visiting the petroglyphs in Peterborough, and one of the rock paintings shows a human figure with a vertical line above its head. And the archaeologist, the Scandinavian archaeologist who saw that first said, oh, it's an axe that's coming down to kill him. And the indigenous man who was showing us around said, no, it's not. It's like a thought bubble. It shows that he's thinking about something. So I think of that story as I read Karen Davies's question, which is there a way to advocate to have more or all archaeologists include going to source and asking the meaning of artifacts of the people who made them, and noting that scholarship isn't fulsome or complete without the indigenous citation. So could you talk about spreading the word to other archaeologists about the need for the interpretations that we're talking about here?
Well, I'll take that first. We've been working on that for 30 years with the archaeologists here in Ohio, and there were people working on it before I was working on it. The problem is not that they don't know that indigenous interpretations are there, it's that they don't want to listen to it. They want to be in charge of the single narrative. Now, the minute you share a narrative, you got to pay attention to what somebody else is saying, give them space. Rating doesn't work if you give other people equal, respectful space. And you got to realize that, especially in North America, it's a rating culture sitting on top of indigenous territory and lands. If they lose control of the narrative, what you get is Trump and MAGA, which you're looking at right now. And that's all because they are losing control of the sole control of the narrative. They're having to make room for African Americans, Native Americans, Asian Americans, all kinds of people who aren't Western European, and they really don't know how to deal with that. Now, some people are trying to accommodate it, but you see what the backlash is when that happens. Archaeologists are on a really conservative end of things. The younger generation is coming back a little better, but they're still pretty arrogant. They assume that if you're a Native American, you're drooling in your soup. And I've had people, I've got a PhD and I'm well published and all kinds of people know who I am. But when I try to tell an archaeologist that's not an egg in the snake's mouth, they're, oh, what do you know? They are not willing to listen to another version that would upend their job security. See, they've got
Exactly.
positions in the university too. And if they start letting other narratives in, what happens to their job security? Yeah, Kaarina, you know that.
Well, just today, in the local newspaper, there was a column demonizing women's studies again,
Yeah.
and expressing hatred of the nonsense that comes out of women's studies. And I'm taking a lot of risks with my books because nobody else is going. Not too many people are going that way with old Europe and revisiting prehistory. And also, I'm not an archaeologist. I'm a cultural studies, women's studies scholar who's doing interdisciplinary research. And I think that I find new perspectives because I'm not part of one field or one domain, like one field of research. I can see things that the archaeologists don't see because they don't know about old Europe or they don't know about women's studies. And so I think that my contribution tries to be that. And I know that it threatens the people who are in power and who protect their jobs. But fortunately, I don't have to care anymore. So I'm not looking for tenure. I had tenure and I lost it. No, I didn't lose it, but I gave it up and came with the consequences. But I'm happier being able to do the kind of research that I believe in. So risk taking is okay when you don't have a big family to feed, I guess.
You got a sick dog there to take care of.
Yeah, the little bugger. She's very jealous when I'm on the internet like this. She senses it and she abuses me at that moment. She tries to get all the goodies just so that I would shut her up. And when I put her outside, we can still hear her barking. So I don't have any solution right now.
She wants your attention to remind you that she is also nature.
That's right.
She is also nature.
Yeah.
Let's check in with Liliana and see if she has a question for us.
Yes, I have a question from an anonymous attendee in the Q&A. And the question is, how did the concept of the gift economy manifest in the prehistoric societies of the Ohio Valley? And what role did it play in shaping the cultural, social, and economic practices of those communities?
Well, according to tradition, mother comes first. So actually, the gift economy is an expression of matriarchal control, not the other way around. So when you have a mother first kind of a situation, think about it. I mean, those of you who are mothers, have been mothers, you have doggies to mother. You're not always thinking about yourself. You can't. And if you do, you're a very bad mother and your children are going to die. You're actually constantly giving something and not expecting much of anything in return. The main principle of the gift economy is there's no equivalency. Okay, I might give my child dinner and she might give me a blade of grass. We're even, right? The idea is that you want to do it, not what you're doing it with. So there's no equivalency going on. That's a really important thing, and you learn that through well done motherhood. Also, mothers never did anything alone. One of the worst things about Western culture is it isolates women alone with the children and the work. That never happened. Women had the longhouses and all the women of the lineage were together. There's always going to be somebody you don't get along with, but there are people you will get along with. And so you always have help in whatever you're doing. Nobody's ever left alone to fend for themselves. Everybody's doing things together. That's another big stimulant of sharing in gift ways, because if I've got some moccasins and you just sprung a hole, I'm going to give you the moccasins, right? And then when I need a new shirt or something, you got an extra, you're going to give it to me, right? So that the mothering thing comes first, and that leads naturally to the gift economy. I think that's the direction. That's the way it worked. Kaarina, do you know?
You need to unmute, Kaarina.
I'm just trying to keep you from hearing the barking. I think you said it very well. I can. I have written a lot about the gift, also in connection with the sauna. I believe it has always been there as a sort of balancing ethos, radical economic principle of sharing for the common good, because the common good is everywhere in this worldview that I have studied.
Yes.
Can't add more to it right now.
Well, in
Okay.
Native America, the sweat lodge, which is not so dissimilar from the sauna, the sweat lodge is male menstruation, and that's kind of gotten lost in the popularization and the commercialization of sweat lodges. But it was actually male menstruation, and the men used to cut themselves so they could bleed without dying, because that's the main thing that mothers can do. They can bleed without dying, or they can make a baby with it. Their choice. So men weren't able to replicate that except in the sweat lodge. I was very interested, Kaarina, that you said the sauna was instituted so that disasters like the comet of 12,800 and 11,700 wouldn't happen again. I think that's really interesting. So men took over childbirth because really it's a womb. The sauna and the sweat are a womb.
Yeah, I have to think about it more and write about it more, but there's not much research on that.
No,
So
I know
it's
there's not.
really a new field, and
Oh,
anyway.
good.
I know. Looking forward to that collaboration. I'm excited to hear what you two come up with separately and together. Let's check in with Liliana and see if she has a question for us.
Judith.
Oh, Judith. Okay, Judith.
There was a question really early on asking about universality of symbols. You've both talked about various symbols and how widespread they are. And so the question is, do you consider that there are some universal symbols, or how would you comment on the widespread use of the various? You've talked about circles and squares, you've talked about earth and sky, and the various symbols.
No, I don't believe in universals as a control mechanism and part of the Western dominator narrative. No, if people have similar symbols, it means that they kind of sprang from some of the same. What you're looking at is a global northern thing. And just because some of the ideas of bears and women marrying go down to Anatolia or go down to Mexico doesn't mean they started there. They spread from the north down, especially with younger Dryas, when you couldn't live in the north because it was nothing but 2-mile high snow. So people went south and they took their ideas with them. One of the things that happens when you've got a wide spread and a depth of that sort of thing, what it means is the antiquity of the idea, not a universality, but how old the idea is. So you're looking at extremely old ideas, ideas that started a long time ago, when you're looking at something that is across the global north, like the bear marrying a woman idea is that Kaarina and I just did the book on. So it's spread, and the number of stylized references to it, like etchings in caves of a bear with a woman there, that happens on both places. That means it's really old, not that it's universal.
That was well said. I think some symbols are very widely spread, and that's why there is a temptation to universalize them. But I wouldn't also talk about them in a universal sense. But the vulva, for instance, there are many different symbolic interpretations of it. But still, in the old European context, in the Paleolithic, in the old ancient caves, I mean, there are several iconic symbols that show that they were widely spread. So yeah, I think there are symbols that are widely shared, but I think there are different interpretations of them, and one has to be very careful about contextualizing them as much as it's possible to do so.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. The Commissioner of Arts and Culture of the Philippines in the past has said at the core value of the Filipino people is that we're human. And the human experience, the way that our eyes see, how we interpret the land is contextualized. But his notion was that, or is that, he's still alive, that there is a common human way of sort of seeing things, but depending on where you are in the land, what more of along the lines of what Kaarina and Barbara are saying, the symbols may have unique and specific land-based meanings, but the symbols themselves are created because, the way that the human mind as a species actually shapes and forms and interprets the worldview we share as common as a species.
And there's a certain biology to it. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, every woman has a vulva. Yes. People are going to notice.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Liliana, you have any?
Yes. I have a question from Constance Tippett, and she asked, what is the history of women's moon hat in the native culture? Either one of you.
Moon times. The moon times, you mean? Well,
Moon hat.
that's just menstruation, and it is not a sweat lodge. It is not a sweat lodge. It's women would withdraw during their periods after a while coincide. If you live together with women and you do for a long time, your periods are going to coincide. So there's going to be a couple weeks span there where you're all kind of having your periods together. The women would retreat to their own little place to do that. The younger children that weren't menstruating yet would be supplying and running and fetching and doing that sort of thing. The younger girls would. And the elder women would be telling stories, telling traditions, just shooting the breeze. A lot of it was. And so the women are together having a confab. So it's kind of like a woman's council for a couple of weeks. Men were not welcome. And in fact, it was not that the men isolated the women. I see all these stupid anthropologists. No. We told them, stay away. Women's menstrual blood could kill a man. Women's blood period could kill a man. That's the tradition. And that's why men stay away. They don't want to die. Similarly, men would go off on their winter hunts and they'd be gone for a long time. What are they doing? Sitting in their hunting lodge, shooting the breeze, communicating and bonding. Same thing. And women, by and large, just don't want to be around. I mean, you've been around when men start jabbering about useless things. Well, who wants to waste their time doing that? So women would just kind of leave them alone and men would leave women alone. And everybody, by the way, got along a lot better and was a lot happier that way than being jammed together all the time, the way Westerners want to do. I think it's because they want to keep an eye on women, frankly. They're scared of what we might cook up otherwise. Kaarina?
Now, can you explain the difference between the moon lodge and the menstruation hut?
We're already born here. Women have their sweat lodge already inside them. It's called the womb. It's called that system. So women don't need to sweat ever. The moon lodge is just where you're going to go and have a 2-week vacation while you're having your period, and you're going to have it with your sisters and your friends. Men do the sweat lodge because they can't give birth. So that's male menstruation. It's a totally different thing. Women don't have to sweat at all. Women are born pure because they've already got the fire in their belly. And if the only time women need to sweat, well, a couple of times. One, if you're really sick, like let's say you got tuberculosis or something, and the time before they knew what the heck to do, women would sweat, try to sweat it out because you sweat a lot if you got TB. So illness was one thing, or if you killed something. If you went as a war woman and you killed somebody, or you went on a hunt, you killed something, then you have to sweat out, which means making it right with a spirit that no longer has a house, because you killed it. That's a totally different thing, not often happening to women unless they went as a man, which would happen, which by the way is not the same thing as transgender or being lesbian. It's a totally different mindset. What it is certain jobs are gendered male and some are gendered female. So if you're going to go be a soldier that's gendered male, you're made a man for the duration of that task. Men, if men become a judge, for example, judging is a female task. So for the duration of their being judges, they have to be female. So they're made ceremonially female to do that job. When the job's done, they're back to being men. So it's not to be confused with gender identity. It's a totally different thing. Does that answer any questions? Or does that just cause more?
I would just comment that in the Baltic countries now, sweating together in the sauna, sauna sisterhood is a big thing. There was a movie done in Estonia that just won a big prize, and it was called Sauna Sisterhood. So women are using the sauna very much for healing and for bonding and for a whole lot of different things, healing from sexual abuse, and I'm part of this movement also because there's a lot of mental health problems. Women suffer a lot of depression, and sauna is a place where they can relieve much of the pressures and enjoy the warmth and enjoy a lot of things. So I don't know what to say about our past in terms of has the sauna always been for men? On the contrary, I think in Finland it was very much a maternal space, and then it was taken over by men, but in a different way than what Barbara just described, because of course our culture is not identical.
Well, exactly. I also think that your land, the temperate climate of your land is quite different. And the reasons that people would use a sauna would be different than perhaps the orientation of what would be in a climate that's much more four-seasoned and not so cold. They would evolve differently. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, who has a question for us? Is it Judith or Liliana?
Judith.
Someone wants to hear more about how a woman's menstrual blood could kill a man.
Well, it's about making life, except no life was made from that one. Life didn't happen with that one. And if a man gets too near to that, it can try to take a life from him to make a life. And that's how you wind up with things like placenta children.
So it's been really interesting to hear the two of you discussing a concept and building on it. And I wonder if either of you has a question for the other one.
Well, I have a lot of questions. But I don't
Well,
know where
we've
to
got-
begin.
We've
Yeah,
got
that's-
maybe
that's
about
pretty
5
big.
minutes.
It's a pretty big question.
Yeah.
I've written 400 pages of this topic, and I'm still editing and adding cautious comments about like not making universal assumptions and
Yes.
respecting the native context. And there's there are a lot of tough issues involved, but the way I feel, I know that there's been a lot of criticism of non-native people writing about the native sweat lodge, but I've come to the conclusion, since I have been part of both, I have visited a lot of sweat lodge ceremonies, and I spent 9 years living very close to a Cree family. And I think we have lost so much of our sauna culture that I learned so much from the sweat lodge practices. And when I started asking the elders in my community whether we had anything similar, I found a whole new context, and I have found a completely new way of thinking about the sauna. So it was a very, very healing and useful thing to compare and to share information. And even if I make mistakes, I think that comparative research is very important, because it's like sharing, giving the gift of your culture's knowledge, so that cultures that have lost something have some way of getting back what patriarchy has taken from them. So I hope that I wish it wasn't so difficult to write about native culture. Of course, I try to be as sensitive as possible, and I mostly use native sources if I can, but not to go there at all. I would lose so much of the possibilities that comparative studies offer. So I'm willing to take the risk that I get criticism again.
Yeah, well, don't worry about the criticism. I find that people want to criticize you for that are either jealous or nervous about their own knowledge base. They don't really have a good grip. Is what I've found. Don't
Well,
listen to people trying to
I think
silence
research
you.
is about risk taking as well.
It is. It is.
I think Jen could say a little bit about that risk taking.
I'm sure she could.
Look at her. She's laughing really hard right now. She
So
likes to
what
poke.
risks have you have come through for you, Jen?
Well, I'm completely outside the box of all the different disciplines, economics, for example, and philosophy, whatever it is that I deal with. I'm always having to re-explain the maternal gift economy over and over and over again, the first lesson, and then try to tack on the other more interesting developments of it. So it's kind of, I'm not an academic. I'm outside the box all the time, but I've managed more or less in some ways. So.
You have done very well.
Thank you.
And you're still here to tell the tales about it, Jen, and we're
Yeah.
grateful for that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Well, I would like to thank you both for joining us today, and especially Kaarina at the very last minute, your spontaneous opportunity to, share some of your writing and research for your new book. And Barbara, it's always a great pleasure to have you with us. It's so much knowledge that you hold, and grateful that both of you are now outside of the realm of academia, where you can do a little bit more creative risking.
Oh, I risked it anyway.
I know you did. You were like a
well ahead
warrior.
of me.
Yes, you were definitely a warrior. I want to thank
Yeah.
Genevieve, Diane, Liliana, and Judith for organizing the questions. And on behalf of the International Feminists for the Gift Economy Network, which Kaarina and Barbara and many of the women in our audience are part of, we invite you to join us on this journey. And I want to just make note that in next weekend, next Saturday, we're going to have a special opportunity. One of Jen's passions is to be able to create a platform for women to actually speak from their heart. And one of the things she would like to speak on and is inviting others to come in a discussion format. So it won't be in the webinar format, it'll be in a meeting format about the events that are happening currently in Gaza, because it is just weighing on people's minds, and we need to not be alone in that journey and holding the space of how we can create peace and stop the horror that's going on there. So we invite you to join us next week. We'll send out a flyer on that. And then in 2 weeks, we'll have Salon number 56, and more information is upcoming on that one as well. And please, we always are welcoming your questions, your comments, and feedback. We're looking forward to a full and abundant 2024, and we hope yours is as well. You can always email us at maternalgifteconomy@gmail.com. If you have missed any of our salons, our conferences, or special events, please feel free to watch our recordings at the maternalgifteconomymovement.org website. And with that, unless there are any other questions from the panelists, just unmute yourself and say your last moments of goodbyes to our friends here before I say goodbye for all of us. So Barbara, you're unmuted. Do you have any last words you'd like to leave with our friends here who have joined us today and will be watching our recording?
Just be healthy, be healthy. I don't know if the world's going to survive, but as long as we're here, we should try.
Absolutely. Thank you, Barbara. I know you speak from experience and from your heart, and we're glad that you're continue to work through it all. Kaarina.
As above, so below, whatever that means in different cultures.
Wonderful. And I'm glad that your dog keeps you very close to nature and your attention. And Jen, any last words?
I just want to thank Barbara and Kaarina for a very informative and beautiful presentation, and looking forward to seeing you again next time. And may the world change for the better very soon.
Absolutely. So until either next Saturday or 2 weeks from today, everyone, please stay safe, especially during these storms in the northern regions. Stay warm and cozy, be well, always be kind to one another. Look for the gifts and share your gifts. And let's all work for world peace. Blessings to everyone. Take really good care, and bye for now.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.